The evening sun dipped behind the rolling hills of Napa Valley, spilling gold over the vineyards and glass pavilion of the Lancaster estate. Crystal chandeliers glimmered like captured starlight, laughter floated over champagne bubbles, and a string quartet played a lilting tune that sounded too perfect to be real. At the center of it all, Celeste Morgan, radiant in lace and diamonds, was every inch the bride people envied. Her smile sparkled in the golden light as she clung to the arm of her husband, Dr. Marcus Hale, the city's most sought-after cardiologist. Cameras flashed. Guests toasted. The world, it seemed, revolved around her. And in the farthest corner of the hall, her twin sister, Ivy, sat alone. She wore a simple slate-blue dress, elegant but understated, and the contrast was deliberate. Celeste had chosen it for her. "You'll look lovely beside the bridesmaids," she had said, meaning, "don't outshine me." Ivy smiled politely at the passing waiters, at the curious eyes that lingered too long, at the whispers that always followed her name. That's her, the twin who never made it. Poor thing, must be hard living in Celeste's shadow. Her fork scraped softly against the porcelain plate, the sound hollow against the hum of laughter. She didn't belong here, not among the designer gowns, the glittering chandeliers, or the people who measured worth in pedigree and perfection. Outside the glass wall, the last rays of sunlight bled into the horizon, setting the vineyards ablaze with amber fire. Ivy set down her glass, deciding she'd had enough pretending, enough being the invisible twin. She would slip out quietly. No one would even notice. Then a voice, low and smooth, brushed against her ear. "Pretend you're with me." She froze, turning slightly. She saw him. Tall, dark suit, perfectly tailored. The kind of man who carried the air of quiet authority that didn't need to announce itself. His eyes were grey like a storm about to break, and when he spoke again, his tone was casual but commanding. "Everyone's watching," he murmured. "Let's give them something better to talk about." Before she could react, his hand slipped into hers. Firm, steady, warm. He drew her up from her chair, his movements confident, practiced. Around them the music shifted to a slow waltz. I don't even know your name," she stammered. "You don't need to," he replied with the faintest smirk. "Just follow my lead." He led her onto the dance floor. The crowd turned. The whispers changed. "Who is she dancing with?"
"Is that Adrian Vaughan?"
"The billionaire?" Impossible. The name rippled through the guests like a spark catching dry leaves. Adrian Vaughan, CEO of Vaughan Industries, elusive genius of AI, notoriously private, rarely seen in public without purpose. And here he was, dancing with the wrong twin. Ivy's pulse thundered in her ears.
"This is insane," she whispered. "Probably," he murmured, his lips almost touching her ear.
"But you're doing great." She tried to focus on the rhythm. 1, 2, 3. But all she could feel was the steady pressure of his hand on her back, guiding her with precision and grace. His scent, cedar, rain, something clean and sharp, clouded her senses. When he spun her gently, her dress fluttered like the wings of a bird finally taking flight. For the first time that night, the eyes on her didn't sting. They shimmered. He caught her again, their faces only inches apart. "You're not used to attention, are you?" he asked softly. "I'm used to being invisible," she said, surprising even herself. He studied her for a moment, the smirk fading into something gentler. "Then let's change that." The song ended and applause erupted. Celeste looked on from the head table, smile frozen, glass halfway to her lips. Ivy stepped back, flustered, but Adrian didn't release her hand immediately. Instead, he leaned close, his voice barely above the music. "See you soon."
Ivy Morgan. And then he was gone, like smoke dissolving into air.
leaving behind the faint echo of cologne and 100 curious stares. Ivy stood there,
heart hammering, unsure what had just happened.
Was it a prank? A performance?
Some strange act of pity?
But as she turned to leave, she caught sight of her reflection in the mirror behind the bar. Eyes bright, cheeks flushed, alive. For the first time in years, she didn't look like Celeste's twin. She looked like herself. Outside, the cool night wrapped around her shoulders. In the distance, the vineyards glimmered beneath the moonlight, whispering secrets only the brave dared to follow. Ivy didn't know it yet, but that night, a stranger's whisper had rewritten the story she'd been living all her life, and it had only just begun. The rain in San Francisco came soft and steady that morning, tapping against the windows of Ivy Morgan's studio like a metronome of quiet persistence. Her small space, half workshop, half dream, smelled faintly of paint and cedar wood. Designs for upcoming clients covered the corkboard, all muted colors and clean lines. She'd thrown herself back into work since Napa, trying to erase the memory of that night, of gray eyes, a commanding voice, and a stranger who'd made her feel seen. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't stop replaying it, the waltz, his hand guiding hers, the words that had lingered like an echo. "See you soon, Ivy Morgan." "Ridiculous," she muttered, brushing sawdust off her jeans. He probably forgot my name the second he left. The bell above the door chimed. Ivy didn't look up. "We're not open yet," she called, reaching for her sketchbook. A deep voice answered, calm, unmistakable. "Then it's a good thing I'm not here to shop." Her pencil froze mid-line. She turned. Standing in the doorway, framed by the grey light, was Adrian Vaughan. Rain dotted his black coat. His tie was perfectly in place, as if storms had no authority over him. His presence filled the small studio instantly. Too large, too composed for the cozy chaos of her world. "What are you doing here?" Ivy asked, pulse quickening. He glanced around, taking in the mismatched furniture, the paint-splattered apron hanging from a hook.
"You actually built this place yourself?"
"Yes," she said cautiously. "Why?" A corner of his mouth curved. Because it's
authentic." He walked closer, his shoes silent against the wood floor.
"I need a favor." She crossed her arms. "From me?" "Yes," Ivy laughed softly, disbelief lacing her tone. "You mean the woman you dragged into a fake dance in front of 300 strangers?" "You didn't look dragged," he said evenly. "You looked like you belonged there." Heat rose to her cheeks. Annoyance, embarrassment, something else she didn't want to name. "Well, I didn't. So whatever you're about to ask, the answer is probably no." He ignored that. "I need you to pretend to be my girlfriend." Silence. For a full 5 seconds, the only sound in the studio was the soft hum of the rain outside. Ivy blinked.
"Excuse me?"
He repeated, calm as before. "I want you to attend a few public events with me. Dinners, galas, charity functions. Appearances matter in my industry, and—" He paused, his gaze flicking briefly toward the floor. "It would make things easier if people thought I was—"
"Involved? Easier?"
she echoed. "You mean for business?" "And for peace," he said quietly. Something flickered behind his composed expression. A flash of fatigue, maybe even loneliness.
"It vanished as quickly as it came." "You must have hundreds of women willing to play that part," she said, struggling to sound unaffected. "I don't need someone willing," he replied. "I need someone honest," she blinked. "Honest?"
He met her eyes. "You didn't care who I was that night. You didn't try to impress me. You told the truth. In a room full of people pretending. That's rare." Ivy frowned, torn between skepticism and a strange pull she couldn't name.
"And what exactly do I get out of this little arrangement?" "Freedom," he said simply. "Freedom?"
From being invisible, her breath caught. It was almost cruel how easily he'd pierced her defenses. He set a small folder on her desk. Inside, she glimpsed an itinerary of upcoming events. each one grander than the last. You'll be compensated, of course, and you can stop any time you want. She closed the folder slowly. This is insane. Probably, he admitted, tone light.
But I have a feeling you like challenges. Ivy tilted her head, studying him. And what makes you think I'll say yes?
Adrian smiled faintly, the kind of smile that didn't ask for permission. Because you're curious. He was right. She wanted to say no, to send him back into the storm he'd come from. But curiosity flickered like a stubborn flame. Who was this man who lived behind perfect suits and guarded eyes? Why did she feel like he was hiding from something far deeper than social pressure? Finally, she sighed. If I agree, there are rules. Of course, he said, folding his arms, amused. Lay them out. 1, she began. I can end this whenever I want. Understood. 2, you don't use me for publicity or business deals. He nodded. Fair. And 3, she said, narrowing her eyes, you stop acting like you already know me. That drew a rare, genuine smile from him. Small, real, disarming.
That one, he said softly, might be harder. For a moment, silence stretched between them, charged, unspoken, electric.
The rain outside slowed, leaving only the faint ticking of drops against the glass. Fine, Ivy said at last, exhaling. We have a deal. He extended his hand. She hesitated before shaking it. His palm warm, steady, grounding. Good, Adrian said, voice low.
Then let's make the world believe. He turned to leave, pausing at the door. Oh, and Ivy, she looked up. Next time wear red, he said.
It suits you better than blue. When the door closed behind him, Ivy stood still for a long while, staring at her reflection in the window. Her heart raced, and her hands trembled slightly. This was supposed to be just business, a performance, but somehow it already felt like the beginning of something that could rewrite everything. The city woke under a soft veil of fog, turning San Francisco into a muted watercolor. Ivy sat by her studio window, coffee untouched, eyes lost somewhere between the skyline and the memory of him, Adrian Vaughn. The name alone carried weight and trouble. Every instinct in her screamed to walk away, to stay small, invisible, safe. Yet, ever since he walked into her life, the air itself felt different, charged, unpredictable, alive. By mid-morning, she still hadn't touched a single sketch. Her mind was trapped in last night's storm, in that handshake that had felt more binding than any written contract. When the bell above the door chimed again, her pulse betrayed her. Adrian stood there, perfectly composed, holding a slim leather folder. You didn't think I'd wait too long, did you? I thought you might take the hint, she said dryly. He smiled.
Hints are for people afraid of clarity.
I prefer terms. He placed the folder on her desk. Inside was a pristine typed contract. The title made her laugh. Public Image Partnership Agreement. She read aloud.
That's
Charmingly corporate. I like things defined, he said simply. She skimmed through the pages. Standard legal jargon about confidentiality, image rights, duration of collaboration. The pay was generous, almost absurdly so. So that's it? She asked, lifting her gaze. You get a pretend girlfriend.
I get to buy a new espresso machine. Something like that, he said.
Eyes steady. But there was something else in his expression. Something that contradicted his calm tone. Ivy leaned back, crossing her arms. You do realize this sounds insane, right?
I've been called worse? She set the contract down and studied him carefully.
Why me, Adrian? Out of everyone you could have picked. He hesitated, just a second too long. 'Cause you don't need me. The honesty of it disarmed her. For a moment she forgot to breathe. You could have chosen someone easier to manage, she said quietly. I don't want manageable, he replied.
I want real. Her heartbeat tripped. You do remember this is supposed to be fake, right?
He smiled faintly. Fake doesn't have to mean hollow. There it was again. That undertone. a sincerity he seemed desperate to hide behind irony. She turned back to the contract. "I'm adding a few things. Go ahead." Ivy pulled a pen from the desk and began scribbling in the margins. "Clause 1, I can walk away any time. No questions asked." "Already agreed," he said. "Clause 2, I don't attend anything illegal, immoral, or unbearably boring." His mouth twitched. "You'll have to define boring. Some of my shareholders might take offense." "Then let them," she said, signing her initials beside the line. "Clause 3, she continued, pausing to look at him directly. "You don't touch my designs. My business stays mine," but that one seemed to catch him off guard. "I wasn't planning to," he said softly. "Good, I built this with my own hands." He nodded once, seriously this time. "And that's exactly why I chose you." For a moment, silence hung between them. Not awkward, but weighted with mutual understanding. The kind that happens when two people, completely different, recognize the same kind of solitude in each other. Finally, she signed the bottom of the page. Officially ridiculous, he took the papers, scanning her added notes with the ghost of amusement. "You realize you just out-negotiated half my legal team? Maybe you should hire me instead," she said, trying to sound playful, though her pulse refused to calm. Adrian closed the folder and extended his hand once more. "Then we have a deal, Ms. Morgan." Her fingers brushed his. The contact was brief, but electric, a current she hadn't felt in years. "Fine," she said, voice quieter now. "But this is just a business arrangement." He leaned in slightly, close enough that she could smell faint hints of cedar and rain. "Whatever helps you sleep at night." Her breath caught.
"You're impossible." "So I've been told." He turned to leave, but stopped halfway. "I'll send a car for you Friday night."
"There's a gala at the Marlowe Foundation. Black tie. Friday?"
she repeated. "That's in 2 days." "I'm aware," he said.
"Plenty of time for you to choose a dress that says I don't care, but I look flawless anyway." Ivy rolled her eyes, but the faintest smile tugged at her lips. "You're unbelievable. I prefer efficient." When the door shut behind him, the room felt too quiet, too still. Ivy stared at the contract on her desk, her own signature glaring up at her in black ink. This was supposed to be simple, a game, but her reflection in the glass window told another story, one where curiosity had already begun to blur the lines she'd drawn so carefully. She whispered to herself, almost as a warning, "Don't fall for it."
"Ivy." But her heart had already stopped listening.
The Marlowe Foundation Gala was everything Ivy had imagined and dreaded at once. Chandeliers that looked like galaxies, a string quartet playing Bach, and people who smiled with their mouths but not their eyes. The kind of place where even the air smelled expensive. She stood in the lobby, fingers nervously adjusting the thin
Strap of her black satin dress, the one she'd pulled
from the back of her closet because it was the only
one that didn't look like she was trying too hard. Her reflection in the mirrored wall stared back, elegant, calm, composed.
A lie she told herself in silken mascara, Ms. Morgan. The familiar baritone turned every head near the entrance. Adrian Vaughan stepped into the light like he owned it. Black tuxedo, posture regal, yet effortless. The crowd rippled as if gravity itself shifted in acknowledgement. He moved toward her, slow, deliberate, his gaze finding hers through the sea of glittering faces. "You clean up well," he said, his lips curving just enough to betray a hint of amusement. "And you look predictable," she replied, though her pulse betrayed her calm. "Shall we give them a show?" he murmured, offering his arm. Ivy hesitated, then slipped her hand through his. The warmth of his skin startled her.
Cameras flashed immediately, like sharks scenting blood. They entered the ballroom to a chorus of murmurs.
Conversations faltered. Champagne glasses hovered mid-air. "Who is she?" "Is that the designer from San Francisco?" "He never brings anyone." Every whisper was a blade grazing her skin. But Adrian's hand remained steady over hers, anchoring her against the tide of scrutiny. "Smile," he whispered, without looking at her. "They're trying to find cracks." "I'm not porcelain," she said under her breath. His eyes flicked toward her, sharp, approving. "Good." A waiter passed with champagne. Adrian took 2 glasses, handed one to her. Their fingers brushed again. She told herself she imagined the spark that followed. Across the room, an older woman approached. Tall, diamond earrings glittering, voice coated in honey and steel.
"Evelyn Hartman, the CEO of a rival tech firm." "Adrian," she purred.
"You've outdone yourself. Finally bringing someone interesting to these dreadful gatherings." Her gaze drifted to Ivy, the smile sharpening.
"And you must be—"
"Ivy Morgan," she said, extending a hand. "I design spaces people actually enjoy being in." Evelyn laughed softly, not kindly. "How refreshing. Most women here design marriages." The words hung, polished and poisonous. Several nearby guests chuckled under their breath. Before Ivy could reply, Adrian's voice cut through the noise. Calm, cool, dangerous. "Careful, Evelyn," he said. "She designs places people feel seen in. Something I doubt you've experienced." A stunned silence followed. Even the violinist faltered. Evelyn's smile froze. "Always charming, Adrian. Only when inspired," he said, his gaze fixed on Ivy. When the woman finally drifted away, Ivy exhaled, realizing she'd been holding her breath. "You didn't have to do that," she said quietly. "I know," he replied, "but I wanted to." The band began playing a soft jazz number, and without asking, he guided her to the dance floor. "I don't dance," she protested. "You're doing fine," he said, pulling her a little closer. She tried to focus on the rhythm, on anything but the steady thrum of his heart beneath his jacket, the way his hand rested at the small of her back, like it belonged there. Around them, people watched. But in that moment, it felt like the world had narrowed to 2. "You realize," she murmured. "They're all wondering if this is real." He met her gaze. "Let them wonder." Her pulse skipped.
"And what if I start wondering too?"
His eyes softened, not with arrogance this time, but something raw. "And maybe we stop pretending." The song ended, applause rising. They separated slowly, reluctant to break the spell. "Adrian!" someone called from the bar. A cluster of businessmen waved, eager for his attention. He nodded, excusing himself briefly. Left alone, Ivy found herself at the edge of the ballroom, watching him. How easily he commanded a room, how people leaned toward him as if drawn by gravity. Yet beneath that magnetic exterior, she saw something no one else seemed to notice: isolation. He wasn't just admired, he was alone among admirers. When he returned, she smiled faintly. "You really don't belong here either, do you?" His brows lifted. "What makes you think that?" "Because you look like a man trying to escape a cage he built himself." For a moment, something flickered in his expression, and surprise, recognition, maybe even relief. "Maybe," he said softly. "I just needed someone to hand me the key." And as the night went on, under chandeliers and whispered curiosity, Ivy realized she might be holding it, without even meaning to. The next afternoon, Ivy told herself she'd imagined it. The warmth of his hand, the way his gaze lingered, the faint sincerity hidden behind his immaculate composure. By Monday morning, the gala was already a headline. "The billionaire and the mystery designer, who is Ivy Morgan?" Her phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Messages from old clients, acquaintances who'd never cared before. She turned it face down, pretending the silence meant control. That evening, rain streaked down the glass walls of her studio. She was bent over a sketch table, trying to focus on a renovation proposal, when a soft knock startled her. She turned. Adrian Vaughan stood in the doorway, drenched from the rain, holding 2 grocery bags. What are you doing here?" she stammered. He raised an eyebrow, the corner of his mouth lifting slightly. "I figured we could eat something that doesn't come from a ballroom." Her brain took a moment to process that the world's most untouchable CEO was standing in her humble studio kitchen.
"Holding celery. You cook?"
She asked, suspicious. "Define cook," he said, walking in like it was the most natural thing in the world. "I can follow instructions, mostly." He began unloading the bags: pasta, tomatoes, garlic, basil, simple, human things. "Pasta?" she asked, incredulous. "Don't judge."
"Everyone starts somewhere." The image of Adrian Vaughan in her kitchen, rolling up his sleeves,
might have been the most absurdly intimate thing she'd ever seen. "You could have just sent a thank you email," she teased.
trying to hide her nerves. "I don't do thank you emails," he replied.
"They're too easy to ignore." For a while, the only sounds were rain tapping the window and the soft rhythm of the knife on the cutting board. Adrian chopped tomatoes with surprising precision. "Years of negotiation," he said, when she noticed. "Teaches you how to keep your hands steady." Ivy stirred the sauce, sneaking glances at him. Without the tailored suit, without the spotlight, he looked human. His hair slightly disheveled, sleeves rolled to his elbows, a faint scar near his wrist, a detail too small for newspapers to notice, but too intimate for her to ignore. "So," she said carefully. "Why me?" He looked up. "What do you mean?" "At the wedding, the gala."
"Of all people, why ask me to play along?"
He hesitated. For the first time she saw uncertainty flicker in his eyes. "Because you didn't look at me the way everyone else does," he said finally.
"Not like I was a story or an opportunity."
"You looked like you wanted to be anywhere but there." She let out a quiet laugh. "So I was convenient misery?" He smiled faintly. Compatible solitude. Their eyes met. A pause, fragile but full. "Does it ever get exhausting?" she asked softly. "Being the person everyone watches?" He didn't answer right away. He leaned against the counter, gaze lost in the flickering light of the stove. "All the time," he admitted. "It's like living in a glass house. People see everything, man, except the cracks." Ivy stirred the sauce slower.
"And do you ever let anyone see them?"
He looked at her. Really looked.
"I'm starting to." The air shifted.
It wasn't flirtation anymore. It was confession. When the pasta was done, they sat across from each other at her small wooden table, the rain still falling outside. No crystal glasses, no staff, no performance. Just two people eating pasta that was slightly overcooked, but warm in ways neither had expected. "This is good," he said after a while. "You're lying," she laughed. "Maybe," he admitted, "but it's the best lie I've ever tasted." They ate in silence for a moment before he asked, "Do you miss it?" "Miss what?" "Being invisible." She paused, the question catching her off guard.
"Sometimes," she said honestly.
"There's safety in being unseen. You don't get hurt." He nodded slowly. "And yet here you are, sitting across from me, being seen." Her lips parted, but she had no answer. When he finally stood to leave, the rain had stopped. He lingered by the door, glancing back once. "You know," he said, "most people talk to me like I'm a transaction. But when you talk—" She tilted her head. "What?" He smiled, small, tired, genuine.
"You make the noise stop." The door closed softly behind him,
leaving Ivy in the quiet hum of the studio, heart racing.
mind spinning. She told herself it was still pretend, but somewhere deep down,
She knew the line between acting and feeling had already started to blur. The world doesn't end with a crash. Sometimes it ends with a headline. That morning, Ivy arrived at her studio to find her phone buzzing uncontrollably. Messages, missed calls, and a dozen notifications from news outlets she didn't even subscribe to. She froze when she saw the words, "Tech billionaire Adrian Vaughan under investigation for offshore money laundering." Her breath caught. She scrolled, fingers trembling. The article was everywhere: Forbes, The Guardian, even gossip blogs. Each headline used the same words: Cayman funds, fraudulent transfers, possible falsified signatures. Adrian's name was there. his company logo, his photo, the one where he looked untouchable, like a man born of marble and ambition. For a long time, Ivy just stood there, her mind blank. The coffee on the table went cold. When her assistant Ella arrived, she blurted, "You've seen it, right? They're saying he moved millions offshore."
That's serious. Ivy swallowed hard.
People say a lot of things. But the documents, they showed his signature, Ivy. She wanted to say it wasn't real, that Adrian wasn't capable of that. But a small voice inside her whispered, "Do you really know him?" The thought stung. That night, she sat in her apartment with the television on mute, watching his image flash across every news channel. His company's stock had dropped by 15% in one day. Reporters swarmed outside his headquarters, demanding a statement. He hadn't called. He always called. She tried to convince herself he was busy, surrounded by lawyers, maybe trying to fix things before the world burned down. But each minute of silence felt heavier. The next day, when she went to meet a client, whispers followed her. The fake girlfriend of a criminal billionaire. She could almost feel their judgment pressing against her skin. At lunch, her phone lit up again, a message from Adrian. "Hey, teens don't believe everything you read." Then tell me what's true." I can't. Not yet." The words sank like stones. That evening, Ivy walked aimlessly through the rain, ending up in front of Adrian's glass skyscraper downtown. Security had tightened. Reporters crowded the entrance, flashes blinding. Through the tinted doors, she saw him, tall, composed, immaculate as ever. But there was something different. The exhaustion in his eyes wasn't physical. It was betrayal. He didn't see her. Or maybe he did and chose not to. She turned away, rain dripping down her hair, unsure which feeling hurt more, doubt or distance. 2 days later, they met again. By then, the storm had grown. Federal investigators were rumored to be involved. Adrian's CFO had resigned. The internet called him the fallen genius. He arrived at her studio without warning, wearing the same expression he'd had at the gala. Controlled, unreadable. "Close the door," he said quietly. Ivy obeyed. "You shouldn't be seen with me right now," he continued. "They'll drag you into this mess." "Then tell me it's not true," she said.
"Tell me this is all a mistake." He looked away, jaw tightening. "I can't discuss it. Legal reasons." "Adrian, Ivy!" His voice cut through hers, sharp but trembling at the edges. "Please."
"Just trust me." She stared at him. This man who had made her feel seen, who had turned her from a ghost into someone real. But trust felt like a fragile bridge, and every headline was a crack beneath her feet. "Do you even hear yourself?" she whispered. "You're asking me to trust you when the whole world says not to." His eyes darkened.
"I don't care about the world. I care about you." "Then why won't you tell me the truth?"
Silence. It stretched between them, heavy and suffocating. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet, almost broken. "Because the truth isn't safe for you to know yet." That was the moment something inside her shifted. Not anger, not fear, but a cold, slow ache of realization. Maybe she'd never truly known him at all. That night, Ivy sat alone on her balcony, staring at the city lights. She replayed everything. The gala, the laughter in her kitchen, the way he'd said, "You make the noise stop." It all felt distant now, like a dream fading at dawn. Her laptop chimed.
Another article.
This one had screenshots, transaction lists, wire transfers, company seals. It looked convincing. Too convincing. She read until the lines blurred, then closed it, pressing her palms to her face. He wouldn't do this, she told herself. He can't. But deep down, the uncertainty kept whispering, what if he already did? The next morning, she walked into her studio early, only to find a bouquet of white tulips on her desk. his favorite kind to send, always precise, always white. No card, just a folded note. "For the moments you believed in me, thank you." Her chest tightened. It wasn't an apology. It was goodbye. She sank into her chair, gripping the note so tightly her knuckles turned white. For the first time since that night at the wedding, Ivy Morgan felt the weight of being invisible again, except now it wasn't loneliness, it was loss. By the time evening fell, the rain had stopped, but the air outside Adrian's penthouse still smelled like thunder. Ivy stood by the massive window, looking at the skyline glittering beneath the clouds. The city looked perfect from up here, sterile, composed, unreal. Just like him, Adrian was behind her, pouring a glass of whiskey, his movements steady but distant. "I didn't think you'd come," he said, his voice low. "I almost didn't," she replied, "but I needed to see you." He turned, the amber light from the fireplace painting his face in shades of gold and sorrow.
"And now that you have?"
She hesitated.
"I don't know what to believe." He set the glass down, walked toward her,
and stopped just close enough for her to feel the warmth radiating from his body. "Then let me tell you something I've never told anyone," he said softly. She met his gaze, searching. "Go on." "When I was 8, he began, "my father told me emotions were weaknesses. He said people would only use them to destroy me. So I stopped showing them." His tone was calm, but his hands trembled slightly as he spoke. "When my mother died, I didn't cry.
"I just stopped feeling."
It was easier that way."
Until you, Ivy's chest tightened. "Adrian?"
He exhaled. "You made me forget the rules I lived by. You made me want things I swore I didn't need. That's why I'm asking you to hold on a little longer."
"Let me fix this before it destroys us both." Her instinct wanted to believe him.
"But logic screamed otherwise. Do you even hear yourself?" she said quietly. "You're talking like this is just another problem to solve. This isn't a business deal. This is your life."
"And mine," he looked away, jaw tense. "You think I don't know that?"
"Then why won't you let me in?" His voice cracked then, barely audible. "Because the last time I let someone in, they used it to ruin everything I built." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The city lights flickered on the glass, scattering reflections across their faces. Two people caught between truth and lies, love and fear. She reached for his hand. "You don't have to face this alone." He didn't move, but his fingers twitched beneath hers, betraying a quiet ache. "Maybe I deserve to." The words stung like ice. "No one deserves to be alone," she whispered. "Not even you." He looked at her then, really looked. His eyes were the color of winter, but something fragile flickered behind them.
"You still trust me?"
She hesitated.
"I want to." That was all it took.
He leaned forward, brushing his lips against her forehead, a touch so careful it almost wasn't there. When he stepped back, the air between them shifted. Warmer.
Heavier, almost dangerous. Later that night,
She sat on the couch watching him work across the room. His laptop glowed softly, numbers and documents flickering on the screen. The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was suspended, like the world was holding its breath. At some point, he glanced up, catching her stare. "What?" "Nothing," she said, smiling faintly.
"You just look..."
"Tired." He gave a small laugh, the kind that wasn't quite real.
"Tired is my default setting." She wanted to walk over, to touch him, to tell him she believed him.
But something stopped her. That whisper of uncertainty that had been growing louder each day. The next morning, Ivy woke to a world on fire. Her phone buzzed non-stop. Calls, texts, headlines. Federal investigation confirms links between Vaughan Industries and Cayman accounts. Adrian Vaughan's personal signature verified. Her pulse quickened. The photos showed official documents, the kind that couldn't easily be faked. Adrian's name was stamped on every page. Her breath caught when she saw his face on live television. Walking out of the courthouse, cameras flashing. He didn't look at the reporters, didn't say a word, but she saw something in his eyes, a storm, cold and controlled. And then her phone rang. It was Ella. "Ivy, are you watching the news? They're saying he might lose everything."
Stocks, partnerships, even his board. I saw, Ivy whispered. Are you okay? Was she? She didn't know.
All she could hear was the echo of his voice the night before. "Let me fix this before it destroys us both." Her heart twisted. Had he been protecting her or lying to her? She closed her eyes, pressing a hand over her chest, feeling her heartbeat race beneath her fingers. The sound of her own breath filled the empty studio. And for the first time since the night they met, Ivy wasn't sure which version of Adrian Vaughan she had fallen in love with. The man who saved her from a world of pretense, or the man who built one bigger than she ever imagined. The city was different now, colder, quieter, as if it too held its breath for the storm surrounding Adrian Vaughan. 3 days had passed since the scandal broke. Ivy hadn't heard from him once. Not a text, not a call, not even a single line explaining what had happened. She told herself to stay out of it, that whatever was happening was beyond her, but the silence burned through her like acid. So, on the 4th morning, she took the subway downtown and walked into Vaughan Industries with her heart hammering in her throat. The receptionist froze when she saw her. "Is Morgan?"
Mr. Vaughan isn't. I'm not here for him, Ivy said, forcing calm. I just need to pick up some design files I left from the gala project. The woman hesitated but nodded.
15th floor. "You know the way?" She did. The hallway smelled the same. Faint coffee, polished marble, and that lingering note of sandalwood that always followed Adrian. But something in the air felt heavier, stripped of its usual precision. People whispered behind frosted glass doors. Security men paced the corridors. By the time she reached his office, her hands were trembling. The door was unlocked. His desk was spotless, except for the single laptop still glowing with life. The screen displayed a maze of encrypted financial records. Her eyes widened. She recognized some of the Cayman accounts from the headlines. But there, one detail caught her attention. Timestamps, initials, and a pattern too deliberate to be random. It doesn't match his writing, she thought. Someone else could have done this without meaning to. She sat down at his desk. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. She didn't intend to cross any line, only to see, to know, because she couldn't bear the idea that he was guilty. Her heart pounded louder. She clicked open a folder marked Cross. And the instant she did, the door behind her opened. "Ivy," his voice cut through the air like a blade. She froze. Her breath caught. Adrian stood in the doorway, expression unreadable, eyes shadowed with exhaustion and something colder. Betrayal. "What are you doing?"
I was just, she stammered, rising from the chair.
"I needed to see for myself. The reports, the documents." He stepped closer, his tone low and dangerous. "So you broke into my office?"
It wasn't like that.
"Then what was it like?" His voice rose slightly, echoing off the glass walls.
You thought I was guilty? So you came here to play detective?
She swallowed hard.
I thought he cut her off.
"You thought you'd find something to sell? To prove the story true? Maybe get your own name in the spotlight while you're at it." The accusation hit her like a slap.
How dare you? How dare I?
His laugh was bitter, almost hollow.
You come into my life, you smile, you say you trust me, Ali, and the first chance you get, you go through my files.
Her throat tightened.
I was trying to help you.
"Help me?" He took another step forward, anger radiating from every word.
I didn't ask for your help. I didn't ask for any of this. Tears stung her eyes, but she refused to look away.
"You're right. You didn't. You never ask for anything, because you think needing someone makes you weak." He stopped. The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut. Her voice softened, breaking. "I came because I believe in you, even when the world doesn't. Because I couldn't stand the thought that the man I—" She hesitated. "The man I care about could lose everything for something he didn't do." Something flickered in his gaze. Pain, maybe regret, but it vanished as quickly as it came. "Leave," he said quietly. "Adrian, leave!" Her heart sank.
"Please, just listen. I've listened enough." He turned away, his voice colder now, mechanical.
"You want the truth?
"Fine, I'm not the man you think I am."
I built this company on control, on precision, on knowing who I can trust."
"And you—" He looked at her, eyes burning with anger and sorrow.
"You just proved I was right not to." Her tears fell then, quiet, hot.
"Unstoppable, you don't mean that," she whispered. "Don't I?"
She stepped closer, desperate. "Look at me and say you really think I'd ever betray you." He did look at her, but his gaze was empty, drained of all warmth.
"It's over, Ivy. Don't ever come near me again." The words hit harder than any weapon.
She flinched, swallowing a sob. He turned his back. The glass reflected him, a silhouette sharp and distant, like a stranger she used to know. Ivy stood there for another moment, waiting for him to call her back, to say, "I didn't mean it." But he didn't. When she finally left, her reflection followed her through the mirrored hallway, a ghost of the woman who once believed in something real. Outside, the rain started again, soaking through her coat as she stepped into the street. She didn't feel the cold. All she could hear was his voice, echoing over and over in her head. "It's over, Ivy," and for the first time since she met Adrian Vaughan, she believed him. The night swallowed the city whole. Ivy sat alone in her tiny apartment, the glow of the streetlights slicing through half-drawn curtains. Her phone buzzed again. Another headline flashing across the screen. Vaughan Industries faces collapse. CEO silent amid new evidence. Her chest tightened. Every word on the screen was another knife twist. Adrian's face appeared in a grainy photo. Stoic, distant, betrayed by the world and by her.
At least, that's what he believed. Tears blurred her vision as she turned to the cluttered desk.
Piles of notes, screenshots, and financial logs lay scattered across it. The chaos of the last 72 hours. She hadn't slept. Not since he told her to leave, but one name kept surfacing through the fog. Victor Cross. She remembered it from the folders she saw that morning, listed under Overseas Partnerships. At first, it seemed harmless, a regular executive authorization. But now, as she combed through the public records, something didn't add up. The Cayman transfers were signed with Adrian's encryption key, but the login timestamps occurred when Adrian was in New York for a press conference. Cross had access then. Her pulse raced. She muttered to herself, it wasn't him.
"It was Victor." Her fingers flew across the keyboard.
She traced Victor's shell companies, small firms under fake names, all registered within months of each other. Money funneled from the foundation's charity accounts.
Straight into offshore holdings. Her heart pounded. This is it.
This proves it. Ivy reached for her phone, scrolling through contacts until she found one labeled Detective Rames, SFPD Financial Crimes. She hit dial, but before the line connected, her apartment lights flickered. Once, twice, then went black. Her breath hitched. The sound of heavy boots echoed in the hallway. 3 knocks, slow, deliberate. She froze. "Ivy Morgan?" A man's voice, muffled but steady. Her blood ran cold. She recognized that voice.
Victor Cross. She backed away, heart pounding in her throat. The door burst open.
2 men in dark coats stormed in. She screamed, but one of them clamped a cloth over her mouth. The smell of chloroform burned her nose. The world tilted, colors bleeding into darkness. When she woke, the air was cold and smelled of rust. A single light flickered above her, swinging slightly. She was tied to a metal chair, wrists burning against the rope. Footsteps approached. "Welcome back," Victor said, stepping into the light. His smile was casual, almost polite, like he was greeting an old friend instead of his captive. "What do you want?" She croaked, throat dry. He chuckled. "Funny I should be asking you that. You poked your nose too deep, darling. Could have walked away clean.
But no, you had to play detective, her eyes flashed. You framed him, he smirked. Framed? Oh no, sweetheart.
Framing implies innocence. Let's just say I gave the media a story they wanted to believe. And your boyfriend, the almighty Adrian Vaughan, he made it easy.
All that pride.
All that silence. He crouched down, looking at her. He doesn't even know you're gone, does he? Ivy glared, silent. Victor sighed dramatically, pulling a gun from his coat and twirling it lazily.
I should have handled this earlier.
But I'm sentimental. I liked you. You had class? He pressed the barrel against the side of her chair.
It's a shame you'll have to disappear now. The words hung in the air, thick and final. Then crash.
A metallic sound split the silence. The door to the warehouse burst open, flooding the room with harsh white light. Step away from her, Cross, Adrian's voice. Low, steady, unmistakable. Victor spun around, startled.
Adrian?
He stood at the doorway, dressed in black, a pistol in his hand, a streak of blood along his temple. Behind him, two of his private security agents fanned out, guns raised. I told you this partnership would end badly, Adrian said, advancing. Victor laughed, cold and reckless. You're too late, Vaughan. You already lost everything. Your company, your reputation, your little plaything. He never finished the sentence. Adrian fired once. The bullet grazed Victor's arm, sending the gun clattering to the floor. Chaos erupted, shouts, gunfire, splinters of light and sound colliding. Ivy screamed as the chair toppled. Adrian dove forward, tackling Victor. The two men crashed into a pile of crates. I trusted you, Adrian snarled, pinning him down. You were a fool, Victor hissed, struggling beneath him. You always were. Adrian's fist cut him off, hard and fast. The echo of sirens began to wail in the distance. When it was over, Victor lay motionless, restrained by Adrian's men. Adrian staggered to his feet, breathing heavily, his shoulder bleeding. He turned to Ivy. She was still bound.
Eyes wide with shock, tears streaking her face. He knelt beside her,
his hands trembling as he untied the ropes.
I'm here.
You're safe now. Her voice shook. You came? He smiled faintly, exhaustion and relief mingling in his gaze.
Did you really think I'd let them take you?
Her tears spilled over. She touched his cheek, her hand trembling.
You're bleeding. He caught her wrist gently.
It's nothing. Outside, red and blue lights filled the horizon. The sirens drew closer. He pulled her close, holding her against his chest as the chaos faded around them. For the first time in days, Ivy let herself breathe. And as she clung to him, she realized it wasn't the danger that scared her anymore. It was the thought of losing him again. The rain had stopped hours ago, but the city still smelled like metal and smoke. Inside St. Helena Medical Center, the corridor outside room 507 was silent, except for the faint hum of the ventilation system. Ivy stood there, clutching a bouquet of white lilies that trembled slightly in her hands. Her reflection in the glass door looked fragile, eyes shadowed,
hair unkempt, a bandage across her wrist from where the ropes had bitten into her skin.
She had rehearsed what to say a dozen times on the drive here. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to doubt you. I never stopped believing in you. But now, as she stood outside his door, every word turned to dust. Through the window she saw him, Adrian Vaughan, the man the world once called ruthless, cold, untouchable. He sat propped up against the pillows, his left arm wrapped in gauze, his right hand resting idly on a file of medical reports he wasn't really reading. For the first time since she met him, he looked
human, not the billionaire on magazine covers.
Not the man in tailored suits commanding boardrooms. Just a man, tired, quiet, real. Ivy took a breath, pushed the door open softly. The sound made him glance up. Their eyes met. A flicker of recognition, disbelief, and something warmer. You shouldn't be here, he said quietly. Her throat tightened.
I had to make sure you were okay. He set the file aside, his expression unreadable. You saw the news then? I did. She stepped closer, each word trembling.
They said Victor confessed. That you were cleared. He gave a small nod, almost indifferent. The board reinstated me this morning. They called it a misunderstanding of extraordinary proportions. There was bitterness in his tone, not pride, just exhaustion. Ivy hesitated by the foot of his bed.
Adrian, I'm sorry.
For everything.
I should have trusted you. He looked at her for a long time, the air thick between them.
Then with a sigh he said, You did what you thought was right.
Maybe that's what I needed. She frowned, confused. He continued softly. I built my life on control. Every deal, every relationship, all scripted. Even this thing between us. I told myself it was just for appearances, just another performance. His eyes lifted, meeting hers.
But it stopped being pretend the moment you walked away. Her breath caught. I don't want to pretend anymore, he said simply. Not for the world, not for anyone. The words hung in the quiet room like a confession. Ivy's vision blurred with tears. She took another hesitant step toward him. You mean that? He gave a faint smile, small, real, and utterly disarming. You think I'd get shot for a PR stunt? A laugh escaped her, shaky, wet, half-choked with tears. She covered her face for a moment, overwhelmed by the surge of relief and love and guilt that all came crashing at once. Adrian reached for her hand. His touch was gentle, grounding.
I kept seeing you when I closed my eyes, he whispered. In that warehouse. I thought I was too late. You weren't, she said softly.
You never are. For a while neither spoke. The only sound was the rhythmic beep of the heart monitor and the rainwater dripping from the eaves outside. She sat down beside him, placing the lilies on the table. They're for you. Though you probably hate flowers. He looked at them and then back at her.
Only when they remind me of hospitals. These...
He paused, his gaze softening. These remind me of you. Her cheeks flushed. He brushed his thumb against the back of her hand.
Stay, he murmured. It wasn't a command.
It was a plea, so she did. She stayed while the rain began again, tapping gently on the window. They talked, haltingly at first, then more freely, about the trial, about Victor's arrest, about everything and nothing. He told her he would step down from the board, take time off, rebuild his company from the ground up, without the walls he used to hide behind. Ivy listened, heart swelling with something that felt like peace. When visiting hours ended, the nurse poked her head in gently. Miss, we're closing soon. Ivy rose reluctantly, smoothing the creases of her coat.
I'll come back tomorrow. But before she could turn, Adrian caught her wrist. Clara? He began, then stopped himself, almost smiling. Ivy, yes?
Tomorrow's too far away. She blinked, not sure if she'd heard him right. Then he added, voice lower, rawer. Come back tonight. She laughed through her tears. That's not how hospital rules work. Then break them, he said, the corner of his mouth lifting. She leaned down, kissed his forehead gently. We'll see. As she turned to leave, he whispered behind her. I love you, Ivy Morgan. Her steps faltered. She looked back, saw him watching her, unguarded, the way she'd never seen him before. And for the first time since that night in Napa Valley, she finally believed it wasn't an act. The sun hung low over the rolling hills of Napa Valley, spilling gold across the rows of vines that stretched endlessly toward the horizon. The air smelled of summer grapes and distant laughter from the villa, where the last guests of the afternoon were leaving. Ivy stood at the edge of the vineyard, her hands brushing the tender leaves of the vines, heart pulsing with a quiet rhythm that matched the rustle of the wind. It had been exactly 1 year since the night that changed everything, a year since the chaos, the betrayal, the rescue, a year since she'd learned that love could survive the wreckage of mistrust, if both hearts were willing to stay. Now, She was back where it all began, but nothing felt the same. Behind her, footsteps approached. Measured, steady, familiar. Still prefer the view from here? She turned. Adrian Vaughan stood a few steps away, dressed simply in a white shirt, sleeves rolled up, the breeze teasing through his hair. The sharp-edged CEO had softened. There was no trace of the armor he once wore. "I do," she said quietly. "It's peaceful, like it's waiting for something." He smiled faintly. "Maybe it's waiting for us." They walked together between the rows of vines, hands brushing but not yet touching. The golden light danced over them, warm and forgiving. Adrian stopped by a cluster of grapes heavy with fruit and turned to her. "You know, the last time we were here, you were hiding behind a table centerpiece, trying to escape the wedding photographer." She laughed softly. "And you told me to pretend I was with you," he nodded. "The best lie ever told." Ivy met his gaze, her voice tender, "and the one that led to the truth." They stood in silence, the air thick with memory and meaning. Adrian took a slow breath, his eyes fixed on the horizon.
"After everything that happened, I used to wonder if we'd ruined our chance before it even began."
But then maybe we just had to break everything open to see what was real. She looked at him, feeling tears sting behind her eyes.
"And what do you see now?"
He reached into his pocket, pulling out a small velvet box. Her breath caught. When he opened it, inside lay a ring, simple, elegant, a single diamond set in a thin gold band that glowed in the fading light. He stepped closer, voice barely above a whisper. "I don't want grand gestures, Ivy. No headlines, no pretenses. Just this, you, me, and whatever life has left for us." Her vision blurred.
"Adrian!"
He smiled, the kind of smile that belonged only to her. "It started as a lie, but I fell for you somewhere between the pretending and the truth. Will you marry me, not as a performance, but as my reality?" Tears slipped down her cheeks as she nodded. Yes, the word came out small, trembling, but it carried everything. Adrian slid the ring onto her finger, his hand steady, reverent. The last rays of sunlight wrapped around them as if sealing the promise. For a long time, they stood there in the vineyard, forehead to forehead, the hum of the earth beneath their feet, the scent of ripening grapes thick in the air. No audience, no cameras. Just two people who had walked through fire and found light again. Later, as twilight deepened, soft music began to drift from the villa behind them. Ivy turned to see a small crowd, their closest friends, a handful of family, even Marcus and Vivian, smiling from the terrace. "Was this your doing?" she asked. Adrian raised a brow, feigning innocence.
"Maybe, or maybe the world decided it owed us a happy ending," she laughed,
leaning into him as they walked back toward the lights. When the first fireworks bloomed over the vineyard, painting the sky with color, Adrian whispered near her ear, "Do you ever think about that night?"
Ivy looked up at him, eyes shining.
"Every day. It's the night I stopped pretending." He cupped her face gently. "And the night I started living." Their lips met, slow, unhurried, the kind of kiss that spoke of forgiveness, of homecoming, of a love that no longer needed to hide. The crowd cheered softly in the distance. The fireworks continued to burst overhead. But for Ivy and Adrian, time had finally stopped. Just them, just real.